Hello, my name is Xenophon Babadimitris. I'm a professor in radiology and biomedical imaging and biomedical engineering at Yale. This interview is part of a collection of conversations with experts in medical software from academia, industry, and regulatory agencies, and is supplementary material for a Coursera class Introduction to Medical Software that will appear in the fall of 2021. Our guest today is Ms. Sara Li. Ms. Li is a senior regulatory affairs consultant at the company ChinaMedDevice. She has over 6 years of experience in the regulatory area, and she supports multiple companies currently navigating the Chinese regulatory system. On a more personal note, as we were developing this class and this book, we had to look for translations of Chinese regulatory documents. I'd like to thank her for providing this to us in the Chinese originals and helping us understand a little bit of that material as well. So that's my personal debt here. So with that, Sara, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about both your company and yourself and what brings you to this field in many ways?
Thank you for the opportunity. ChinaMedDevice is a consulting company that partner with different companies ranging from small startup to top 10 medical device manufacturers. We provide regulatory solution, testing solution, clinical and regulatory strategy, as well as post-market surveillance and QMS solution. Myself, I have over 6 years of regulatory experience with Class 2 and Class 3 medical devices, including new product development, testing, regulatory submissions. Previously, I worked on different international submissions at Philips Healthcare and Medtronic prior to joining ChinaMedDevice. So I do have strong technical knowledge and experience in a wide range of active devices, including standalone software. And I previously worked directly with China NMPA testing center and in China, and I support quite a bit of China submissions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So let's start the process here, and for many of the students listening to this video for the first time, they probably have no idea of the Chinese regulatory system. It's new to me as well. I have to admit, this is not my area of expertise. So why don't you just review a little bit both the history of medical regulation in China and what the current state of affairs are? What are the major legislations? What are the documents that people should be aware of in some ways?
Compared with US FDA, China has a much shorter history in regulating medical devices. The regulation of supervision and administration of medical devices was first published in 2000 by China State Council. It has gone through 3 major revisions over the past 20 years, and the latest revision, Decree 739, came into effect in June 2021. And this is the fundamental law that for medical device, it covers complete product life cycle, like medical device production, registration, commercial operation and usage, adverse events, inspection, legal responsibilities. From my perspective, China is constantly looking at international practices. So they actually borrowed a lot of concepts and structures from other countries in order to build its current regulation system. So in recent years, in line with other global markets, China introduced post-market periodic risk evaluation report, the UDI requirements. They're actually taking a phased implementation approach, starting with the highest risk classification. China also adopted IMDRF pre-market submission format and adapted them to meet China local regulatory needs. So now when we look at this new revision, Decree 739, that came out in June, the major changes are actually very positive for the industry because China really encourage medical device innovation. They try to optimize the regulatory review and approval process, like having more flexibility in clinical evaluation. They introduce a conditional approval process for medical devices for the treatment of rare disease or life-threatening disease. Also, given the pandemic of past year, it's not surprising to see the inclusion of an article that allows for fast-track approval of devices that are used for public health emergency. Meanwhile, I think China now focuses more on post-market supervision, quality system inspection. They actually increase the violation penalty in their new decree.
Let me just clarify a couple of things for students listening here. So the other two regulatory systems that we have looked at is the European system and the US system. In the US, the FDA is both the regulator and the reviewer. In Europe, the regulation comes from the European Commission and national bodies, but the review happens with private companies, this notified body. So where is China? Is China closer to the US or closer to Europe in that regard?
China is close to the US. The leading authority is called National Medical Product Administration. The authority levels of medical product administration approving registrations are different between domestic medical devices and imported medical devices. So for all imported devices and domestic class 3, registration will be done with national MPA. But for class 2 and class 1 domestic devices, it will be city level or provincial level MPA to review the submissions.
That's interesting. Thanks. So we have a list of topics as we were planning this discussion before that we're going to go through. And I guess we should start with quality systems. And again, this is a situation where the European system is closer to the ISO 13485 model. The US has its own regulations. So let's situate China in that. Where is the Chinese quality system regulation and how similar or different is it than the other two systems?
Yeah, in China, the GMP is allowed that medical device manufacturers are mandatory to meet. It's similar to ISO 13485 and similar to FDA QSR Part 820. So all device manufacturers are expected to meet China GMP throughout their production, development, and manufacturing. So China GMP set requirements like the US for device design control, production, labeling, document control, traceability. China GMP also has specific appendix for sterile devices, implantable devices, and IVD. So it asks manufacturers to implement a risk management system throughout device development, production, and post-market process. I think in recent years, China committed more resources to do quality system inspection.
If one is a foreign manufacturer, first of all, just to clarify for the students, GMP stands for good manufacturing practice. That's an initial that's very common in the industry, so nobody explains it out at this point. So if you are a foreign manufacturer and you're dealing with the NMPA, will they actually come and inspect you in the United States if you have a facility here? Is that typical? How does that the review happen?
So if it is a foreign medical device manufacturer, an NMPA may ask for inspection. They will fly to, let's say, United States to do on-site inspection, and they will notify you ahead of time. But it is not mandatory. They each year they have conducted several overseas manufacturer inspection. But if this is a domestic medical device manufacturer, it is mandatory to go through a local inspection by NMPA.
So the next step, and I guess you alluded to it already, you've spoken about class 1 and class 2 and class 3 many times. So let's talk a little bit about the risk classification system used in China. From my understanding, and this from what you have mentioned before, China uses a similar class 3 classification as the United States, but there are some differences here. So what is the scheme and what does this involve?
So in China, there are 3 risk classes: class 1, class 2, and class 3. So China has a classification catalog that they are constantly updating. When you decide your classification, you want to look at that and see if your device description and intended use can match a certain device type in that device catalog. For class 1 device, it will require a filing notification. Class 2 and class 3 both require a technical evaluation process where you will present your device performance data, its non-clinical evidence and clinical evidence to demonstrate its safety and effectiveness.
When we talk about the technical data, how similar is the data that gets used to what would be presented in the US? I mean, is China following similar guidelines like the IMDRF guidelines evaluation, or are there anything specific here that's unique to the Chinese market?
China has adopted many international standards, but they also developed its own national and industry standards. They have released a lot of China guideline specific to Chinese regulatory environment. So I would say there are similarities between different countries' guidelines for specific device type, but there are differences. If engineers are not familiar with Chinese standard, have not been trained on China requirement or China guidance, it will be a very big challenge. So I think identify country-specific requirements early on during project development phase is very important. We always recommend that you, at the beginning of your development stage, you want to translate country-specific standards and guidance into your project requirements to ensure that you will have a very successful registration down the road.
So let's talk a little bit here about the registration process in China and the difference between domestic versus imported devices and what the key steps involved are, including testing in China and issues like that.
Okay. First of all, you will need to determine the classification, the filing types, and the authority that you will be dealing with. So when you know your device classification and know which authority you will work with in the review of your technical documentation, you will first need to draft a PTR, which is called Product Technical Requirement. And PTR usually set of device performance indicators and testing method that follow Chinese national and industry standards. From there will be a type testing process based on PTR for class 2 and class 3. And this testing usually happens locally at an NMPA accredited test house. After you get your test report, you will put together your documents, like all your non-clinical evidence, your clinical evaluation report, your packaging validation, etc., and then you made a submission. In the evaluation process, you will need to handle reviewers' questions. So overall, this registration could take at least 1 or 2 years to complete.
And you mentioned that NMPA approved test facility. So if you're doing a clinical study, does it have to be done in China, or is it simply a matter of them also verifying some performance characteristics for the device? How does that work?
Yeah, so a clinical study can be done in China, but they also accept overseas clinical trial data. It's just that you need to think about if there are any gaps that you need to address, like ethnic difference between overseas patient and Chinese population. So basically, if you want to leverage your overseas clinical trial data, you will need to compare a comprehensive clinical evaluation report to justify the differences between different countries, like difference in clinical practice. The ethnic differences will not negatively impact your device safety and effectiveness. Another way to bypass a local clinical trial is to establish equivalency to a predicate. A predicate means a product that is legally approved to be placed on the Chinese market. You want to make a comprehensive comparison with that predicate in 16 different areas, like its technical data, its performance, and manufacturing process, to show that your device is subsequent equivalent to that predicate. And when you demonstrate that, you can avoid a local clinical study. So that's an easier and quicker path to fulfill the clinical requirements in China. Thank you.
Okay, so let's close here by just asking sort of questions about if you can highlight any major points of emphasis that is different in China from the US EU. So somebody who's somewhat familiar with the US or the EU process, what are they surprised by when they first start encountering the Chinese regulatory system? Is there anything particular that's unique to China that one should be aware of at a high level? I'm not interested in all the details, of course, yeah.
As I said, China has adopted many international standards, but they also have their own standards. So one difference is that you really want to know what China is required for that device type, you will want to know Chinese specific standards. If China has converted international standard to a Chinese standard, you want to see if it is in the same revision. Like for IC 60601-1, China is still on the second revision, but the rest of the world is on the third revision, and that's quite a difference when you do the local testing process. Another difference is that China requires country of origin approval before submission can be made with an MPA. And let's say there is a US medical device manufacturer, they will need to have this device receive 510K or PMA approval before they are able to start the submission activity in China. But that actually has changed for innovative device, which we actually can talk about. So China has a special pathway for innovative devices. If a medical device meets certain criteria, it will be eligible for priority evaluation and early engagement with reviewers. So this year in the degree 739, they're saying that for devices that receive innovative device designation, they no longer need to present their home country approval when they do their China submission. And that really means a device manufacturer will be able to start their regulatory process in China and in their home country at the same time. But if a device has to meet certain criteria in order to be eligible for this innovative evaluation process, it has to have a Chinese patent related to its core technology. It needs to have a significant clinical value. Its performance and safety need to have fundamental improvement. Once you approve that, there will be an expert panel to discuss your deliverables and determine your device meet those criteria. When you have that designation, an NMPA will appoint a special team to guide on the testing, the clinical trial plan, and any staged outcome. And the registration and testing will all receive priority.
Is there anything else that you would like to say about it? Is there anything we haven't brought up that you think students or anybody else listening to this should know about China, or anything else that you need to say here, Sara?
There are a lot of international communication going on. So China is one of the 10 IMDRF members and has been contributing to many IMDRF work streams. China joined a program that allows for rapid exchange of safety and adverse event data globally. So I think China continue to engage with foreign governments and collaborate with industry organizations to accelerate international medical device regulatory harmonization. They try to build a better regulatory environment for China. And this year there are so many guidance documents that have been released, which really shows that China desires to be aligned with other major regulatory agencies in the world, but at the same time maintain its unique features and process.
Okay, so for the students listening, IMDRF is a National Medical Device Regulators Forum, which is a coordinating body that tries to harmonize regulations across the world. Okay, Sara, thank you for doing it. Thank you for coming in, and hopefully some of our students will learn something about the Chinese process, which is less known in the United States than, of course, the American or the European process. Thank you.
Thank you.